Hello, welcome to Steve and Ryan do the Claude Replit thing.
Hello,
Ryan,
hello.
hi Ryan. Ryan is
Hey.
building. Ryan's a very talented web developer designer. Well, new to web development, but very talented graphic designer. Um, and we've been friends a long time. He's just building a new landing page website for new clients. So we've been going back and forth on this design for a couple days, and I just built this Claude Replit tool, and many of my friends have started using Claude in Replit and asking sort of how I do things and what prompts I use to get things built pretty fast and have them work the first time. And so um, Here, I'll start a new session. Um, the thing I want to go over in this video is basically like the easiest way to use Claude Code in any environment, but we'll be using it in Replit to build something reliably quickly. There are some things I've learned about just sort of managing agent context and memory and like sort of how to do things in what order and why that I want to talk through here just for reference for people if they want to build things. Um, as best I know right now, it's January 2025 or 2026, and things change so fast that this probably won't be true tomorrow, much less next week or in 2 months. But for right now, the fastest way I know how to build anything technical in a way that is like pretty device agnostic, depending on, whether you want to work on your phone or your Windows laptop or your Mac, this is the fastest way to get things done. I'm a big fan of Replit Agent, but it's a little expensive if you really get into building something serious. And so Claude is a great way to if you have a Claude Max subscription, you can just build ridiculously fast. So that's what we're going to do today. And then obviously, if you have used Claude before, you know it can be easy to end up going back and forth on things, and hopefully this strategy will help you save a little bit of time on that. So, Ryan, you were telling me earlier today that when you fix individual bugs and that kind of thing, sometimes it doesn't work on the first try.
Totally. Yeah, there was one feature where I was going back and forth with Claude, and it kept saying it was fixed, and I tested, and it wasn't. So,
Okay.
yeah, I was excited to get your input on a method to bypass some of that.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. And then just to get viewers up to speed on what's going on here. So this is like a very minimalist sort of landing page for web design clients where you enter your email and then you enter name, phone, company, job title, and website description. And then it just has you sort of go through a sales script style set of questions where you can record and transcribe audio to answer those questions, and it will live transcribe them, and it should be saving the audio file and also the transcription to the database live as we go. But you'll notice that if we refresh, it doesn't, if you like accidentally close the page on your phone or whatever the case, it doesn't save your progress. It doesn't make it easy for you to get back to where you were. It doesn't um, save the stuff you've already entered or any of that. And if you have recorded a 20-minute voice message, that would be ridiculously frustrating. And so it does save your voice message now, which is cool. But there are a few other things like the form beforehand that it doesn't rehydrate from the database. And then skipping to the right step, it doesn't do yet. So it's a pretty simple build, but we're going to use that as our example feature for this situation because I think it will make a much quicker demo. So does that about sum up the things we want to fix, Ryan? Did I nail all that?
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Okay, cool. Well, cool. So the first thing that I think of as an overarching principle when I'm working with any LLM related thing is that the way large language models work is that they're predicting a web page. So if you have a confusing web page that's two or three things simultaneously, you're going to get a worse output than if you just have one clean, cohesive, coherent narrative that the LLM knows how to autocomplete. And I know that's massively oversimplifying things, but if you take that principle and apply it to Claude Code, that means if you have a chat history that's just arguing back and forth about bugs, it's likely that you're going to autocomplete more arguing back and forth about bugs. And so it's you can notice Claude Code introducing new features like they'll clear your memory after they generate a plan and this sort of thing. And it's for this reason. It's that if you have a clean conversation history, and then you start with something very coherent and detailed, it's going to be much easier to continue making things and generating stuff that's coherent and detailed, just because large language models are autocompleters. And so my whole process working with language models is very centered around like maintaining the clarity of the context window, making sure it all makes sense, and actively like working with the large language model to make sure we're solving any of its confusion live before we ask it to do anything technical, so we then don't end up with errors at the end. And then the only other principle I really like to pay attention to is giving the large language model ways to figure out its own errors and fix them before it wastes my time looking at them. And so we're going to do both of those things in this recording, where we'll try to keep a cohesive narrative going the entire chat, and we'll also try to have the LLM solve its own problems before it comes back to us and says things are done. Okay, so that's the broad overview of what's going on. Let me show you practically how I would get into it. So in this case, for our hydration step finding sort of situation, I'm going to describe that to the AI, and have it make a plan. Now, this is, like I said, usually this is a pretty simple feature. You could just fix this in one shot, but I'm going to do the same process I would do if I were building an entire like iPhone app from scratch. This will work with a feature of any complexity. So if not even just a feature, literally an app of any complexity or multiple apps, I've used the same prompt to build entire mono repos that are three apps, like a Vision Pro app, a Watch app, an iPhone app, and a website. And you can use this prompt to do really anything of any complexity, because Claude manages all of the sub agents to keep it very simple and linear for itself. But we're just going to do a simple demo. So, okay. The prompt I'm going to use, I'll transcribe what I'm saying here. I'm just basically going to describe the problem to Claude. Hey Claude, so we're working on a website landing page here for people who want websites built. And right now we have a 5-step flow that I'm sure you're familiar with. And we do a great job of welcoming people back, telling them they have a previous recording when they refresh the page or they lose their progress or whatever the case, based on either the lead they've entered or on their website fingerprint. I'm not sure. But we need to also be rehydrating the email field and then the company, phone number, name, title, all of the fields based on our device fingerprint, and if it matches the email that's entered in the lead form. And so if people refresh, it should automatically go to the step of the form that they were already on, presuming the first 2 steps are already filled out. And then if they go back after that refresh, they should be able to see the stuff they already filled out. And so this is obviously like device dependent. We don't want it filling in for people who are on a different device or whatever the case. We don't want to accidentally leak any sensitive information. But please make it so that, people still have their state maintained if they happen to lose the page and need to reopen it, um, on the same device. And just make the whole flow feel a lot better. Like if I refresh the page mid transcription, it should resume gracefully, right? It should just let me continue recording if I want to when the page resumes, and it should still be on that step. So would you launch some research agents to go find out how the app works now and get me a detailed plan, numbered and titled and ordered by dependency, and structured such that a wave of agents can build it all in order. Um, and then I want you to present that plan in 3 parts. So the first part, as I just described, numbers and titles for everything that you'll need to touch, everything that you'll need to build in order to get this done, what I'm asking for. And then part 2 of the plan should be a description of all of the user stories involved, all the stakeholders. So I want you to describe how it's going to work for users, how it's going to work for admins, how different possible interruptions of the flow on different devices are going to work, and how those edge cases are handled. And then I want you to end your plan with a third section that's questions you have for me that you can't figure out on your own from Googling it or from looking at our source code or from reading this prompt and paying close attention to what I already said. If you can't figure it out from those 3 things, you can ask a question about it, but please, when you ask a question, suggest answers you think I would give based on all the information you have from me already. And then I'll let you know if you're wrong about any of those suggested answers. And then when we're on the same page, you can write a markdown plan version of all of this in a markdown document, and then you can launch the build agents. So please go ahead and launch a wave of foreground research agents right now to go figure out what needs to be in that plan. No background agents, no solo work, just launch a wave of foreground agents, figure out what needs to be in the plan, reply to me with the plan, and then when we're on the same page, you can write the plan down Okay, we're back. Sorry for the brief interruption. My computer crashed right as I was finishing transcribing all that. Um, so um, Basically, the important parts of this prompt, I know it's a lot of jargon, and some of it may change. Like right now, I'm experimenting with doing one big wave of agents that all run at once. Claude Code only runs 10 of them at a time, but if you run them as one big wave, as each one finishes, a new one can start. And so I used to run waves of 10 at a time, but that requires it to wait until all 10 have finished. And sometimes one takes like a ridiculously long time. So it's better if you run it all as one wave, I've found out. But all of those are just nuances that change year over year, month to month, day to day, week to week. The general principle of the thing that I am initiating here that is important is that we're asking it to build a plan that's ordered by dependency. So it's going to build the things that depend on other things first. We're asking it to ask us questions about anything it's not sure about. And then we're going to talk through those questions with it so that it has clarity on anything that we don't know that we didn't specify well in our prompt. And the rest of it is really just, what I happen to be into building right now. And then the reason that I'm asking Claude Code to use subagents to do this is because it keeps, as I mentioned earlier, its context clean, right? So if you're going back and forth planning stuff out with it or you're having it build stuff, it's messing up its whole context. Whereas if it launches a sub agent, it's writing a quick prompt for the agent. And then that agent, when it's done, writes a quick prompt back to Claude and says, here's what I did and here's how it went. And so that way, Claude only has two messages versus thousands of all of its build prompts. And it has this really nice conversation where it understands that things are happening and it is not losing track of what you asked it earlier because it's not thousands of tokens earlier. It's just a little bit earlier in the chat. And so it makes it much easier to keep a cohesive prompt the entire time. Before I launch this, Ryan, do you have any questions on how this all works or any stuff that you're curious about this prompt and how to do it yourself?
I think generally this makes sense to me. I'm trying to think if I have any specific questions. I mean, like we've talked about, it seems like sometimes this is overkill for smaller features. I'm curious, like, is there any middle ground if it's like not a super tiny tweak, but it's not a huge feature?
Yeah. Usually my bar for doing this is like if it's more than two or three features. Like if I can't just tell Claude, can you launch three agents and fix these three things real quick? If it's any more complex than that, I will use this prompt. And then this prompt works all the way up to like maximum complexity. So,
Okay, that makes sense. And then when you just mentioned launching multiple agents to resolve something,
mhm.
can you speak to
You know how when you're like trying to fix something and while you're typing the prompt to Claude, you notice that something else is broken? And then
sure?
in your prompt, you end up saying like, hey, can you fix this one thing? Oh, and also this too.
Hmm.
And then Claude sort of goes like, you just asked me to do two things. Like now I'm going to do both sloppily.
Sure, totally.
Yeah. So instead of doing that, I will also add to the end of a little prompt like that. Can you please just resolve both of these with simultaneous foreground agents? So they each do their own thing. Give them each a detailed prompt. Let them solve each individual problem rather than trying to solve both problems yourself.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. For the same reason, right? Just like keeping the context as clean as possible, focusing on just answering Claude's questions and making sure you're making yourself clear is so much more important than trying to go back and forth with it and all that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and launch this prompt now. And what we're basically going to see, presumably, is it'll launch 10 research agents. It will realize that this is an incredibly small amount of work and that it's going to give me a plan. And it's going to be way overkill for the things that we need to do. But this gives you a sense of sort of what the structure should look like, even for a big thing. I have no idea how many research agents it's going to launch. Sometimes I'll ask for a specific number if I have an idea of what's going on. The fun part about the research agent step as well is you can ask some of these agents to be agents that are Googling API documentation or they're finding answers to things you don't technically know how to do. Like if you're using a new API or SendGrid or whatever, and you don't know what the setup process is like, some of these research agents can be Googling things for you. So you just mention everything you're not sure about. Let the research wave do that before they write the plan, and then they can integrate all of that into the plan.
Do you always specify how many agents?
Not always. I do when I like am worried that it's not going to use enough agents. The one thing
Okay,
I've noticed with Claude is that sometimes it'll just like launch two just because I said agents and it
okay.
doesn't think it needs to use agents. And so in those cases, like here, it would have been good to say 10 because it knows that this is a simple feature. But 10 would have been super overkill. I also know that this is a super simple feature. But yeah, on those things where you think Claude might disagree with you on analysis and think it's really simple when it's actually more complex and it needs to go look in more places, I would say like please launch 10 agents for everything you can think of that might be, regarding this problem. And that's a great troubleshooting technique too. Like if you and Claude have been going back and forth on something and neither of you agree on what the problem is, um, you can just ask Claude, like, hey, we haven't found the issue yet. It's clearly not this thing we've been going back and forth on. Can you launch 10 everything you can possibly think of, broad research agents of things it might be that you should look into? And maybe some other agents that are independently going to figure out what it might be themselves, where you don't give them a suggestion. And it'll do that too. So that's a great way to
Right.
broaden your search if you're having trouble.
Cool.
Okay, so now it has done its research agents. As you see, they didn't run very long because it's a pretty simple thing. But it came up with four pretty decent agents to run: homepage form flow, fingerprinting and lead matching, audio recording, and storage. So that's great. And now it's going to reply to us with the plan. You can kind of see it outputting all the tokens. And here's our plan. So, oh no, Steve accidentally refreshed the page. Nice thing about Replit is that it's still right here. I just have to pick the right tab. There we go. Okay. Um, okay, so the plan, as I mentioned, starts with everything numbered and ordered by dependency, and I ask it to number and title everything just so I can keep track of what's going on. Um, so yeah, it seems like it understands it correctly. It's noting that device fingerprint is only used for recording session recovery. There's no form state persistence. No lookup by email. So you can't find your old recording by your email if you load it on another device or something like that. Oh, you welcome back UI only appears for interrupted recordings, not for returning users. Partial lead capture via send beacon on page leave, but no rehydration from it. Cool. So yeah, it seems like it came up with a great strat to do this. Very cool. Yeah, so again, totally overkill for this feature, but like it's definitely going to work when it's done, which is great.
Cool.
Um, Here are user stories. So it does look like it's describing the user stories correctly. Usually I review these just to make sure they are an adequate description of sort of what I'm expecting the app to do. And sometimes you'll catch misunderstandings that you didn't even know you were saying wrong in these. So this is good to read these in detail. I won't just for the sake of our recording length, but yeah. And then it's sort of going through edge case handling and that kind of thing. This is all great. And then it asks some questions. So uh, often I will go through the questions carefully and provide detailed answers if I disagree with any of the questions. Um, but in this case, I don't think it's worth it for the sake of our demo. And you can always, if you're just feeling lazy, just say like, those questions look good. I trust you to figure it out. But the more effort you put into resolving all the questions and getting on the same page with the AI about the questions that it's not sure about, the better the output will be. So I always pay the most attention to the question section and make sure that I clarify. I'll just type like Q1 sounds good, Q2, whatever, right? Yeah, I trust you. Q3, if you disagree on something, you can give it a detailed answer there, and I'll just do that for the rest of it. But for the sake of our demo, hey, this looks great. Thank you for putting all that together. Seems awesome. I do think you should make sure that we are persisting every character that's typed to our database so that we can see abandons. I don't know what send beacon is. I assume that's just the function name. But yeah, just make sure that we have a abandon tracking so we're not losing any information. Neither are our clients. We want to respect people's time and make sure they have a good experience on the site. They don't feel like they've lost any information ever. With all that said, I think you're good to go ahead and write the plan. Please write the plan in Markdown and then remind all the agents to read the plan when they start. Remind them to write tests before they finish their individual task. Don't leave writing tests up to other agents. have the same agents that wrote the code write the tests, ensure they have 100% coverage, run the tests, make sure they run successfully, fix it until it's green, and then finish their task. And if you'd please launch all of the different waves as just one big wave of foreground agents, that'd be great, so that as each agent finishes, another agent can start. They'll work 10 at a time. So please just write the plan in a way that synthesizes all that into one cohesive plan, and please include in the plan these detailed instructions I've given you and everything the agents need to know about this whole plan and our conversation and our goals so that they're clear on what success looks like. And then go ahead and launch the big wave. Thanks. And then, my friend, you have your thing and you're done. And then when that's done, you should have your feature fully built, tested, and it should work. Do you have any questions on that or how it works or any thoughts? Or, I mean, that is basically the whole tutorial. I know it's very simple, but if you take the time and put the time in to make it great, it does turn out great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this makes sense. I mean, it's helpful to just see how you're doing it in action. Can you copy that prompt that you just said too?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll text that to you as well. Yeah, I'll put these in like a little, for the people watching this recording, I'll put these in a little side cart so you can reference them and you can ask your ChatGPT or your Claude to make a custom version of these prompts for your project. And eventually Data will be able to just do this for you. But yeah,
Cool.
so the best part about this is you'll notice all of this has happened in one conversation, and it's not a very long conversation. So the AI is still crystal clear. It knows exactly what we're working on. It's not confused. There's not a lot of back and forth. And so as it starts to launch these agent waves, it has real clarity on what it's going to do, and it's going to do that well. Cool. Well, let's let some of the agents launch, and you can kind of see what it looks like as they start working, and we'll see how many agents it decides to launch at once here. It said 7 waves, so it could be up to 70 agents, which would be wild, but it didn't number them individually, did it? Oh, 20. Okay. Yeah, so that's not too bad. So we're looking for 20 agents here. And sometimes it won't launch as many as it said it was going to. And then you can hit escape to cancel them all and you can say, "Hey, aren't we supposed to have 20 agents?" And then it will actually launch them all. That's about the only edge case I've run into.
Cool.
Any other questions or stuff you want to talk about while we wait for it, Ryan?
Hmm. Do you usually, like, I'd be curious of your actual workflow, like sometimes it takes a little bit of time for these. Do you, like, I noticed that sometimes when I was doing it earlier, it would take a little while, so I'd go do something else and then I would get sucked into that and I was kind of doing a back and forth. But if I'm just staying with it, I'm waiting a little bit in between. Like,
Mhm.
it's kind of a granular question, but like, how do you deal with that?
At this point, let me know if I don't answer this question. I'm not 100% sure I'm answering the right one. But at this point, I will wait to make sure it finishes writing the right number of agents. And then once the first 10 of them start, I'll just go to another tab or work with another Claude. You can usually run about 3 of these at a time, and you'll run through your max rate limit in an hour or two. So that's
Okay.
usually my workflow is I'll just find 3 really big things I need to work on, whether that's 3 separate projects or it's 3 different Claudes in the same repo on the same work branch. Um, these agent waves do just fine not interfering with each other. So long as you tell them that other agents are working and they're aware of that, they won't step on each other's toes. If you don't tell them there are other agents working in their repository, they'll assume that there's some error and they'll often revert each other's work. But so long
Okay.
as you tell them what's going on, even if they're not in the same chat together, they'll coordinate pretty well. So
When
that's
you
my
say,
oh,
oh, go ahead.
no, you're fine.
When you say a separate tab, do you mean a new browser tab for Replit?
No,
Or do you
I
mean
I literally just mean another shell.
new shell tab? Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'll just launch a new Claude over here, and then I'll go, hey Claude, our testimonials need profile pictures. Can you make beautiful profile pictures, names, titles, company names? We really want the testimonials to be like real and realistic and feel real and have links to LinkedIn and Twitter and blah 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 for those people. Yeah. And then you could do the same thing over here, right? Where you can launch a research wave and then answer the questions and then launch a build wave.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can do about 3 of those at a time, and then you'll start hitting rate limits in an hour or two, and you'll start really hitting max rate limits if you do more than 3. Some people do as many as 5. I've heard who do Claude Code on a regular basis, but at that point you have to go in to start using like 2 or 3 Claude Max subscriptions.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, if you're doing a big wave, I did a wave of these. It was 127 agents the other day, and it took a full 8 hour, like overnight, for it to finish. So
Whoa.
yeah, so
Was that for a
you can get
huge
some
fee?
pretty crazy stuff done if you want.
Was
Yeah,
that for
I'll send you
like
the
a
landing. I'll send you the landing page. It was crazy. We have less than a minute till the recording stops. Any other things we should talk about on the recording?
no, I think overall that covers it. Like I'm curious to see the